Yeah, friends, thanks for clicking on the video. Today, we're talking about a refrigerator. And specifically, this fridge has high humidity, which causes the vegetables to get moldy. The mold grows really fast because there's just so much humidity inside the fridge. And that's definitely not what the inventor had in mind. We've got a problem here, and it's actually a really simple one. The water that's in the fridge comes from condensation. That means when I open the fridge and leave it open for a while, there's an exchange of air. The cold air from the fridge escapes, and the warm air from the surroundings, from the apartment, from the room, gets inside. We should mention that the fridge is set to between 41 and 45 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on how you set it. And the room air is usually around 72 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on what feels comfortable and how it's set. So now you open the fridge, and those 45 degrees go out. That's fine, no problem. But the other way around, it actually is a problem, because when the air exchanges the other way, let's say it's 72 degrees, that 72-degree air goes into the fridge. And because the fridge is cooled down to 45 degrees, that's why condensation forms on the back wall of the fridge. That's actually planned for, of course. That can happen if the fridge is left open for a longer period of time. I mean, the fridge will alert you if it's open for too long, and that's really how you know it's been open too long, because otherwise it wouldn't alert you. Up to that point, it's not a problem. The only problem is if the water can't drain away. Then we've got a problem. The idea is that the condensation collects on the back wall, then runs down the wall, and then flows into a sort of funnel at the bottom. There's a hole in the funnel at the bottom. The water runs through that hole and drips down into the condensation tray. The system is well thought out because the compressor generates heat while it's running. It generates heat. And as a result, this drip tray naturally heats up. Well, heats up in quotes. It doesn't get boiling hot, just warm. And the water that drips down into the fridge from above just evaporates again. Too much humidity in the fridge is bad because it causes the vegetables to mold first, then the lunch meat starts to go bad and rot. That's definitely the first downside. That stuff gets moldy. The second downside is, of course, the water that collects inside the fridge. The moment the fridge is left open too long, it has to work harder again. That means the compressor kicks into high gear again to bring the fridge back down to 7 degrees. The fridge has an air circulation system, so the cold air is distributed evenly everywhere. With a fan like that up there inside, it automatically turns on and off when you open and close the door. But like I said, that's what it does. It circulates the air inside the fridge. If the temperature is no longer at 7 or 5 degrees, then the compressor has to kick in again and, of course, use more energy to bring the fridge back to the 7 degrees it needs. That obviously uses electricity and might even reduce the lifespan of the appliance. Because the appliance has to cool much more often than if you always close the fridge right away. Water just somehow has to find its way down into the condensate container. For that, we must take out the plate. I've already taken out the top compartment. We need some space after all. I think that's totally right. It's pretty wild that there's mold in the fridge again, even though we just cleaned it ourselves. That's another downside. It's not just the vegetables that get moldy, but the fridge itself, too. All right, now let's do the thing back there. So this is the drain hole I was talking about. But you can already see that the water's really pooling up there. So when you clean the fridge, definitely take out the back part where the water drains, because as you can see, there's a ton of gunk back there. So here we've got the compressor, and here is the drip tray. This is where the water goes in. And from the way it looks here, we've got a rim in there too. So water has definitely been sitting here before. So the drain definitely used to work at some point. In the end, there's this twisty thing here. I've actually never seen anything like this before. I only know it with a hose that runs down from the top, kind of like a channel that goes all the way down and then ends up here in the tray. But here, it's done a little differently. Right here with this dark brown part, located way up here inside the section. That's where the water comes out, and then it runs in here, kind of like, well, it probably fills up in here first, then it flows over at the corners, because there are these corners in here, and when it reaches this transition, it then flows out of this hole here into the catch tray. You can also see from the edges that water has definitely been standing here before. Of course, you can hardly get in there to clean it because the radiator's in front of it. Now we have to make sure that right here at this spot, at this gray spot, we break through so that it really drains down here. Let's see if anything comes out here now. You can see here how the water's standing inside. Now I tried poking around in there a bit. There's even more coming out, but a lot is really draining now. Makes you wonder, where does all this gunk come from? That's insane. That's disgusting. Yeah, I know. I can feel it. I'll turn you off for a bit, just for a moment. Shouldn't be too big of a deal now. What the hell is all this crap? That's disgusting. Seriously, guys, this is really disgusting here. This is like slime. It's a breeding ground for bacteria. That's really crazy. The kind of disgusting filth that's coming out of there. I have absolutely no idea how I'm supposed to clean this. Whoa. That's pretty wild, huh? That's definitely something else. Crazy. All right, now I've filled up a syringe with water. And yeah, I'm just going to squirt it in here now. The problem with this wood is that I can't get around the corner. I can get in from the back, but I can't reach down. There's a wire lying here now. Let's see if we can get in somewhere with it. Now we're pulling up the wastewater here and seeing if that's enough. All right, we're through, guys. So, do you think we can just run it through right now? More properly? I hope you can see it running out well inside. Okay, then we're done now. So wire's definitely recommended. Yeah. Of course, you could also say you do it with warm water. Yeah, because heat cleans, you know, it loosens things up a bit. So you always have to make sure that there's never any water standing up here. There should never be water up here inside. It always probably needs to be dry. All right, that looks good. You could also try blowing it through with compressed air, basically going in from the top. But then we'd have to hold a rag over the hole somehow. But I didn't need to do that now because I managed it with the wire. And with the syringe also builds up pressure when I let the water in. Yeah, luckily it cleared up. Of course, it's important that the rear channel goes back in. So the hole cover, because that's a collection container that directs water into the hole, definitely has to be back in place or the system won't work. Even with the hole, water basically runs next to it. That's how it catches the water. It sits in there like this. That's how it sits in there. That's how it sits in there. Then you have this edge here, and that's where the water drips onto. It then runs in here like this, gets directed to the hole, and drips off here. That means the water also needs to be cleaned properly. Then everything gets put back together and cleaned. You'll need a piece of metal wire. Or there's also another option like with brush attachments. There are these long pieces that have a brush, and you can try to get in there with them. All right, that's it again. Thanks a lot for watching. If you liked the video, feel free to give me a thumbs up. See you in the next video. Bye.